Welcome to another episode of What Else You Got with Mitch and Margot. He's Mitch, I'm Margot. How is everybody today?
I don't know what everyone else is doing, but I'm doing pretty good. So,
You
what do you got for us today?
Well, Mitch, I have one question for you. We'll,
Uh
we'll
oh.
see if this one question can fill an entire episode. Are you ready?
Sure.
Mitchell, is life fair?
It's never fair. That's the purpose.
That's the purpose? Is that
Yeah.
what you said?
Yeah. Life's not supposed to be fair.
Why is it not supposed to be fair?
So, another one of the quotes that I had pulled up that I don't have it in a ready to use spot, but you don't grow in comfort.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah, smooth seas never made for a great sailor.
Mm hmm. Yeah.
So many years ago, I was at a conference and listened to a speaker because oftentimes you will hear people ask, "Well, why did this have to happen to me? What did I do to deserve this? What this is not fair." But I heard a great speaker at a conference many years ago who asked the question, why not me? So instead of asking the question when something, uncomfortable happens, instead of saying, why me, why me, why me, pause for a second and ask the question, why not me? So this horrible thing that may have happened, why should it happen to the guy next to you instead of you? What makes them more deserving of the pain than you are? So no, life is not fair, and I really think that the more important question, instead of asking why me, ask why not me? Because the fact of the matter is life is not fair. We have different circumstances. There's always an element of random chance or luck, and other people's choices impact our path. So no, life is not fair.
Yeah. Another interesting antidote that I heard also was, do you know where uh,
Wait, sorry. Did you say antidote or anecdote?
I said antidote, but it's antidote. So
Anecdote.
yeah,
Sorry. Do you still remember what you were going to say?
yeah. Basically, it really just comes down to: do you know where the ability to make good decisions come from?
I think I know where the ability to make good decisions come from.
Where would you say it comes from?
The ability to make good decisions for me comes from thoughtfulness, research, consideration, and inspiration.
Okay, I've got a very easy one-liner. Good decisions come from bad decisions.
Ugh.
What? Do you know why it comes from bad decisions?
Well, number one, I don't like the idea. And number two, I think what you just said gives permission to go out and just intentionally make a bunch of bad decisions.
Well, that's not really the permissive side. It's more of the reason why you don't do XYZ is because you happen to do XYZ or something similar in the past and you know not to do it.
Yep.
So that's where you
Because
get good decisions is from bad decisions.
one of my favorite quotes is you the definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing over and over and over again expecting a different result. So to your point, the a good way to learn to make good decisions is from a history of a bad decision.
hmm And so it really is just those very simple things where going back to your original question of, is life fair? Well, if it was fair, then you wouldn't have the ability to find out what is a bad decision, what is a good decision, and what's a way for you to grow and improve. Versus if it was fair, somehow someone would provide for you and you would provide for them. But it's also just one of those that, what is the benefits and gain if everything's equal?
Well, and could you imagine how boring life would be if life were in fact fair? Because in order for life to be fair, that means I need to have the same number of shirts as you do. But to be even more precisely fair, the shirts you have would have to be the exact same shirts I have. But then but then you come into the conundrum of, well, then it's no longer actually fair, because even if you and I have the exact same shirts in our closets, your body is different than my body, and the t-shirts that look good on you would not look good on me. Plus we've got different, different sizes and different color preferences. And so in fact, the only way for it to be fair is if you and I then are exactly the same. And so if you and I are exactly the same, what would we even have to talk about? So life being fair would be utterly boring.
So that actually brings up two thoughts for me. One, if we're talking about fairness, so you were talking about the person, but how'd you control rain? If it were fair, everyone would have to get this exact amount of rain.
Right. Because if you get more rain there, you're going to need a rain jacket. And if I get less rain here, what am I supposed to be jealous that you have a rain jacket? Or am I supposed to get a rain jacket also?
Yeah. So that actually shifts over to my next point, which, as I'm thinking about it, is forking into multiple points. But there's a song that talks about a gray town and only gray things are allowed. And so the entire town is gray. And this guy comes in, meets a girl, and he gives her colorful flowers. And the town goes, well, if we can't have your color here, we have to get rid of you because only gray things are allowed here. And so the song talks about how he basically changes the town. And then I've actually heard of other ideas. So, consecration. Do you know what consecration is?
Yes.
So basically, consecration comes down to everyone puts into a common pile, and everyone takes out just what they need. Which that's different than communism, which is where someone takes from everyone and then redistributes. Consecration is where everyone contributes and everyone takes, versus communism, which is one person collects and one person distributes. And so there's a couple stories of a couple communities that do consecration, but as soon as one person went out and with a little extra cash from the community trade, they were able to come back with different pants, and that then basically destroyed the entire community because the community was no longer uh, fair. They shifted to, well, he got a pair of pants. I want a pair of pants, and those are cool pair of pants. So it's when you introduce change, fairness quickly disappears.
Well, and consecration, just to be clear, has multiple meanings. I mean, if, because of course I asked my friend Google, consecration can mean setting apart or holiness and purity. But to your point, it also talks about it can mean total surrender and a living sacrifice. So, consecration, if you give all aspects of your life and your talents and abilities and properties, then if you're living with a group who's agreeing to do that, then everybody would have enough, right? Is that the point you're trying to make?
Yeah, which I can't remember the two words. So there's basically everyone can be equal, or everyone can be.
Equitable.
There we go. Yeah, and so equal is everyone gets two boxes, which there's a really cool picture which I'll put here of where you have a short kid who gets two boxes, stares right into a fence. You get a tall person who gets two boxes, and then you basically can walk over the fence. And then you have the middle person who has two boxes, who is at the perfect height to see over the fence. But when you get equitable, the short guy gets three or four boxes. The tall guy gets zero or one, depending how tall they actually are, which the picture shows it correctly because I don't remember it right now. But it's just one of those that equal is everyone's fair. Equitable is, yes, everyone's different, but everyone's treated correctly.
Yes. Yes. Equitable is more important in my mind than equal. And again, concept of whether or not life is fair. I just think life would be so boring, like the gray town you talked about. As a lover of color, I I would be so bored in a gray, dull world. I think that I think it's important to understand that life is not fair. I had when I was raising kids, I had friends who were strong believers in making Christmas absolutely fair for all the children, meaning that they would pick a dollar amount and each kid would get gifts that equaled that dollar amount. In my mind, number 1, the kids aren't going to know what dollar amounts were spent. And plus, what if you find one item on sale at a huge discount? Then that kid's going to get a more valuable gift. And I just frankly thought from an early age, it's just important to teach my kids that life isn't fair. Christmas isn't fair. Just there's another phrase that says something like, you get what you get and don't throw a fit. So be glad that you're getting Christmas gifts at all instead of comparing to what the person next to you got. Just be be thrilled that somebody cared about you enough to give you a gift.
Yeah, and there's if everything were fair, then there wouldn't be the ability to gain effectively to the point where you are able to elevate your position. Because if it were fair, if you work 10 times harder than other, well, actually, if it were fair, you're all working equally. So there's no ability to improve beyond someone else because you're all equal. But with the unfairness, you are able to adapt into the difficulty that's given you to the point where you're able to grow and gain skills, gain resources, so that you're able to improve your position. And in some cases, some people are able to improve their position so much that they're able to help others improve their position also.
When you talked about adapting into the difficulty, that's another concept also that is really beneficial for life. If you are a believer in a higher power and you're praying that some sort of trial or burden be taken away from you, the trial or burden may not be taken away, but you may gain the strength to overcome it or master it. And so that's kind of what you said about being able to adapt and grow into the difficulty. So no matter what obstacle we might be facing, we can improve our skills and improve our strength to master it or overcome that obstacle. And so I think that obstacles are a great opportunity for us to think creatively or to improve our skills, to improve our strength in order to understand and overcome that obstacle.
Yeah, and I keep having two thoughts, which it's quite dangerous. One of which was when you're talking about uh, when you said adapting into a solution, I thought of our friend Darwin, who would definitely agree, where uh, if you don't evolve to overcome something, then you're going to die out. And so it really is just one of those that the ability to grow and improve is basically one of those laws of nature where if you can't adapt to it, then you will probably be removed from it. And then off the point of the ability to become creative to work through a problem, one of the YouTube channels that I follow, Matt's Off Road Recovery, they have a very unique set of tools because no one does off road recovery in their area, or there are others, but they specialize in it to the point where they've got what they call the world's largest off road wrecker, which is a custom built truck that can crawl over rocks and can haul out other cars and tow them behind them through absurd scenarios that your normal rollback car hauler can't even dream to get back in some of those areas. And so it really just comes down to difficulty is an opportunity to grow and improve. And I know there's some famous quote that parallels that, but it really just comes down to adversity is the opportunity for innovation or something to that effect.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't remember the first part of it, but it's something like Adversity is the mother of invention?
The
Or
necessity of invention.
let me see if Google knows. Because because how does that that's like one of the most common quotes. How can we not remember that? Mother of invention. Google knows
Necessity is the
everything.
mother of all invention.
Necessity. How'd you do that faster than me?
I just thought of it because I was working it backwards.
Necessity is the mother of invention. And Google goes on to say, which means that difficult situations and urgent needs inspire creative solutions.
Granted,
Yep.
some of them are not OSHA approved, but OSHA approved comes later.
Says this saying is often attributed to Plato, who wrote something similar around 380 BC. So, yes, life's not been fair since the time of Plato. So,
Mm-hmm.
really, since the beginning of time. Well, even whether, I mean, no matter what your belief system is, I mean, you were talking about Darwin. There's so many different belief systems of how we came into being, and none of them involved being fair. All of them involve evolving and learning and growing and overcoming. So, I mean, that's why we are here, is to learn and to grow and become the best versions of ourselves possible.
So that going off a concept, avoiding the politics side of it, there was something really interesting I saw on the video that uh, you have the ability to find 24-hour, 7-day a week emergency plumbers to fix anything. And they are a relatively fair price, right? Well, no? Okay. Well, but then you go over to healthcare where you get mediocre healthcare in some areas at exorbitant prices, unless you have some bundle to, in theory, save you money. But it's the opportunity of full competition and necessity versus I'm trying to make it fair for everyone and so that everyone can have a piece of it. But it's the discrepancy between those highlights the difference between trying to make it fair and trying to make it available.
Yeah, I think the topic of the medical industry in our country is an entirely separate conversation. But I mean, capitalism, if we talk about the plumber, capitalism is not built on life being fair. And so whether you're talking about it from the consumer's perspective or the business perspective, it's not fair. So like from a consumer's perspective, your specific example, I've got a pipe that breaks in the middle of the night and is flooding my house. Well, first of all, there has to be some self reliance that comes into play. First of all, you're not going to just stand there and watch it flood your house. Hopefully, you have the basic skills. Talking about basics again, hopefully you know where the shut off valve is for your house. So go shut off the water, then call for help. And there are a lot of choices out, well, depending upon where you live, I suppose. There are a lot of choices of whom you can call. And again, it's not fair. Google doesn't just bring up the next plumber in line who's been waiting patiently for business. It brings up a variety of plumbers, and then you have to sift through those and either go with the very first one who answers the phone or go with the one that you can afford the price for. So from a consumer's perspective, the faster you want to get that plumber there depends upon what your resources are to pay for that plumber to get there. And then from the business perspective of it, it's not fair either, because you've got small plumbers and you've got big giant corporations of plumbers. And so the larger corporations might have a larger advertising budget to snag those consumers who are calling in the middle of the night and charge them a lot more money. You've got the smaller plumbers who may have a more affordable price, but might not have the advertising budget to get their name in front of you for you to call them in the middle of the night. So it's not fair from any of the angles. It's not fair. It never will be.
So, as you're going through that example, I thought of a different definition of fair. So, your pipe bursts in the middle of the night, you need help, you inconvenience someone in the middle of the night saying, hey, get your butt out of bed, I need your help over here.
Mm-hmm.
But to make it fair,
Mm-hmm.
I will pay you extra.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I see what you just did there. Yes, yes. I mean,
So,
it's called supply and demand. If there's a demand for a plumber in the middle of the night and the supply of plumbers is limited, then the plumber can charge a higher price because of supply and demand.
and not just supply and demand, but it's one of those that, like the people who have to work on holidays. How do you make them feel a little bit better about having to work a holiday? You give them holiday pay, which is generally 2 times the normal rate. And so there's different ways that we make things fair, but it really is just trying to balance what some of us feel as a inconvenience with what we see as a benefit. And as long as we balance that off to a fair trade-off for an inconvenience for your benefit, that's where we get fair, but we just
Well,
change the definition of fair.
and you're using the word fair there, which is fair. But also my mind keeps going to supply and demand. So like even employees working on holidays. If you've got the demand, the need, but the supply is short, then you will have to pay more in order to get that need met. Supply and
Yeah.
demand.
And this is one reason why I like the idea of capitalism. There's a ton of other thoughts on it, which is another day. But the entire idea behind capitalism is it's to make things fair to someone's viewpoint. And I say it that way because, yes, you might have to pay a higher price for a resource, but it's one of those that for the other side, they're going, I'm getting a fair or a beneficial price to my side where I'm willing to provide the service or the item, and the other person's saying, I'm willing to pay for that because it'll cost me more to do it myself.
Okay, so I did not write down what you said. You said something to the effect of the simple definition of capitalism is to make things fair. I disagree. So
Oh,
of course I asked Google, and so Google defines capitalism as an economic system characterized by private ownership of the means of production, where businesses are run for profit in a competitive market. In this system, prices, production, and distribution are primarily determined by supply and demand, with a limited role for government intervention.
and granted, when you go off of that definition, I'm going, yes. And granted, my definition that I was using for the example is slightly off in the sense of you vote with your money, you vote with your feet, and you are willing to pay a certain price for a certain item. And if you feel it's not worth it, you go somewhere else. And so it is still technically, I just described supply and demand, but it really comes down to you are trading one resource for another resource, which technically is bartering, but capitalism is a common resource that's passed around. And it really is, what are you willing to trade that you feel is fair for another thing that you feel is fair? And that's where you can get your equity, equality in a different definition, which also means you get a different definition of fairness versus the everyone gets the same slice of pie, everyone gets the exact same thing, versus you get a fair value for the pie, but you can go buy a different flavor.
Right. And so again, I so appreciate Google's input here. It talks about, the key pillars of capitalism being self-interest, which is what you just talked about, and the freedom of consumers and workers to choose. And so that freedom, that ability to choose, that plays into that concept of fairness, because if you don't think something is fair, you don't have to buy into it. You don't have to participate in it. And that is one of the benefits of capitalism is you can protect your self-interest, and you can decide as a worker or a consumer if you think something meets your definition of fair and whether or not you want to participate in it.
Yeah, and it really is. We can go off of the standard definition of fair, which is everyone's equal, or we can change the definitions a little bit to where we have our uniqueness and our individuality while still playing a fair game. Not Monopoly. Monopoly, you always lose. But it really just comes down to what are you doing to be able to create a fair playing field for yourself?
Yeah, for yourself and frankly for others. That comes back to the concept of community. What are you doing to help the people around you? You use the word consecrate. What are you doing to donate? What are you willing to give of yourself? What are you willing to contribute to make the world a better place? And if you see someone who clearly has not gotten a fair shake or a fair chance, what are you doing about it? Are you giving up one of your boxes that you don't need to stand on? Are you giving one of your boxes to help somebody else who's struggling to stand a little taller? And what responsibility is it of yours and mine to help people who have had more obstacles in their lives, who have less benefits and have had more struggles? What are you going to sacrifice anything to help another person feel a little more of that equity?
And I like how you said a couple of things, and I want to tweak it a little bit. Where there's basically three tiers of stuff. You have your brand new stuff, you have your secondhand stuff, and you have your donated stuff. And I'd say three tiers because that's usually how people go through the mentality of acquiring items. Where people who have a little extra generally prefer the new. People who are trying to be frugal or they're living within their means generally go secondhand, and the people who are getting by usually get some level donated, whether that's going to like Goodwill and purchasing a severely discounted item, or whether it's given directly to them. There's a bunch of different ways to approach it, but one of the things I really like is, do you pay for the value that you receive from the item? So people who like the new stuff, they like the new car smell. They like it to just work, and then when it doesn't quite work, they're willing to hand off to the next person. The next person who wants something that's reliable, they might need to put a little bit of work into it, but they get the tool to do the job. And then you've got the person who says, I'll take what I can. It might not work very well, it might break pretty quickly, but I can get the value I need out of it. And that's really just one of those that I described three different price tiers of stuff. I also described three different value tiers of stuff. And it really just comes down to, um, with what you're saying, where you may be in the new category, which you can help the donate category, or you can pass it down to the secondhand category, or you're in the secondhand category, you can pass it down to the donate category. And it really just comes down to, do you receive the value you need out of an item, and can you pass it down to help elevate the lower categories?
Yeah. Yeah, so maybe instead of worrying about whether or not life is being fair to us, maybe we could put that energy into thinking about how life has not been fair to someone else and do something to help someone else. And it kind of comes back to the concept, if you're feeling poorly about your own life, go out and serve somebody else, because shifting that energy will often shift our perspectives, and trying to find happiness in our own life often is a matter of perspective.
Yeah. So whether the world is fair to you before you start, or whether you make it fair for you, or you make it fair for someone else, there's always somewhere to try to help.
Yeah, that was a good discussion. Thanks, Mitch.
Yeah. Well, that's it for this episode of What Else You Got with Mitch and Margot. Like, comment, subscribe, do all the fun stuff, share, and we'll see you guys on the next one.